There comes a moment in every person's life when they look in the mirror and realize that the reflection staring back isn't quite the person they expected to become. It's not necessarily failure that unsettles them. It's a quiet, aching awareness that something essential has gone missing. A subtle distance between who they are and who they could be. For many people after the age of 35, this moment arrives not with drama, but with silence. You wake up one day and realize that you've built a stable life, perhaps even a successful one. Yet something inside feels strangely disconnected. You're playing your roles well, parent, partner, professional, but somewhere beneath all that, you ask yourself, am I really living or just existing? That question marks the true beginning of self-transformation. Because transformation isn't about doing more. It's about seeing more, seeing yourself clearly, sometimes for the first time in years. 1. The truth about change. We often imagine transformation as a single event, a breakthrough, a decision, a turning point. But psychology tells us that real change doesn't happen in a flash. It unfolds quietly, layer by layer, as the mind dismantles and rebuilds itself. Carl Jung described this process as individuation, the integration of all the fragmented parts of the self into a unified whole. Abraham Maslow called it self-actualization, the gradual unfolding of one's highest potential once basic needs are met. Different words, same essence. Transformation begins the moment the pain of staying the same outweighs the fear of change. Most people, however, never reach that point consciously. They live guided by invisible scripts, beliefs formed in childhood and reinforced by culture, family, and habit. These beliefs become psychological walls that quietly define what we think is possible. I'm not good enough. People like me don't succeed. It's too late to start over. They sound harmless, but they shape the architecture of our lives. 2. The first step, awareness. Transformation begins not by tearing down those walls, but by noticing them. Awareness, as simple as it sounds, is the first act of rebellion against the conditioned mind. Because once you can see a pattern, you can no longer be completely controlled by it. Modern neuroscience supports this. Every time you consciously challenge an old belief or behavior, your brain begins to rewire itself. New neural pathways form. Old ones weaken. The brain isn't a fixed map. It's a living landscape that reshapes itself in response to thought and experience. Transformation, in scientific terms, is neurobiological reconstruction. When you choose differently, you are literally reshaping your own mind. But here's the paradox. Most people want transformation without discomfort. They want the reward of change without the friction that makes change possible. Yet, from a psychological perspective, discomfort is not a sign of failure. It's evidence that your brain is breaking free from its old patterns. 3. Why growth feels like chaos. The ego's main job is to maintain stability, to protect your current identity. So when you attempt to grow, your inner system resists. That's why change feels chaotic. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's the old self fighting for survival. Psychologists call this homeostasis, the mind's attempt to restore its familiar balance when identity is threatened. This is why new habits often fail. You can try to wake up early, eat healthier, or think more positively, but if deep down you still see yourself as undisciplined, unhealthy, or negative, your brain will unconsciously pull you back to your old state. Real transformation begins not with new habits, but with a new self-concept. Behavior follows identity, not the other way around. If you say, I'm trying to be more organized, the effort feels forced. But if you start believing, I'm the kind of person who creates order, your actions begin to align naturally with that identity. Transformation, then, is an identity project disguised as self-improvement. Transformation is not about becoming someone entirely new. It's about remembering the parts of yourself that have been buried under years of conditioning, expectation, and fear. It's the art of peeling back the layers of who I should be to rediscover who I truly am. 1. Truth before effort. Most people try to change by sheer willpower. They force new behaviors while secretly holding on to old identities. They say, I want to be confident, yet deep inside still see themselves as insecure. They act strong, but believe they are weak. The subconscious doesn't buy the performance. It knows the old script too well. That's why transformation demands truth before effort. You can't become someone new while lying to yourself about who you currently are. Radical honesty is the foundation of all deep change. Not the kind that shames or punishes, but the kind that gently exposes what's real. Here's what I feel. Here's what I've avoided. Here's what still hurts. That level of self-awareness breaks the inner defenses that keep you trapped in old patterns. It's like cleaning a wound, painful at first, but essential for healing. Once you face yourself without judgment, the mind no longer has to hide behind denial or resistance. You stop trying to change from a place of self-rejection and start growing from a place of understanding. 2. Integration, not fixing. The self-help industry often tells you that you need to fix yourself. But psychology teaches something deeper. Transformation isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about integrating what's been forgotten. Every part of you, your ambition, your fear, your anger, your compassion, exists for a reason. When you reject parts of yourself, you create internal conflict. When you integrate them, you create harmony. Take procrastination, for example. Most people think they need more discipline. But underneath procrastination, there's often fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, or fear of being judged. When that fear is acknowledged instead of shamed, procrastination loses its power. Because now the mind no longer needs to protect itself through avoidance. Transformation is not self-attack. It is self-reconciliation. 3. Emotional awareness, the key to lasting change. You can't transform what you refuse to feel. Emotions are signals, messages from the subconscious about what's unhealed or misaligned. Anger might indicate crossed boundaries. Sadness might reveal unmet needs. Anxiety might arise from standing between your old self and your emerging one. When you learn to interpret emotions instead of suppressing them, you move through them rather than being ruled by them. Modern psychology supports this. Studies on mindfulness and self-compassion show that when you approach discomfort with curiosity instead of judgment, the brain's fear center, the amygdala, quiets down. This opens access to the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for reasoning, creativity, and long-term decision-making. In simple terms, kindness toward yourself literally expands your capacity to change. It creates mental space for reflection instead of reaction. The small moments, pausing before you speak, breathing before you react, saying no when fear wants you to say yes. These are the micro-revolutions of transformation. Each time you choose differently, you rewire your brain's response to life. Over time, these small victories accumulate, and one day, the old identity simply fades. 4. The cycle of change. Real transformation is rarely linear. It follows a repeating cycle: progress, doubt, regression, clarity, renewal. It mirrors Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, leaving the familiar, facing inner trials, and returning transformed. Psychology calls this the liminal phase, the in-between space where the old self dissolves, but the new one hasn't yet taken shape. It's confusing and uncomfortable, but absolutely necessary. Without this stage, no genuine rebirth can occur. During this phase, your brain's default mode network, the system involved in self-reflection and identity, becomes more active. It's your mind's way of rewriting its internal story. Every new story you tell about yourself, when emotionally charged and repeated, begins to form new neural pathways. So when people say, "You become what you believe," they're not being poetic. They're describing a measurable neurological process. Belief isn't just thought. It's a pattern of neural firing that feels true because it's been repeated enough times. And the only way to change it is through conscious repetition, emotional reinforcement, and new experiences that prove to your brain the old pattern no longer defines you. Transformation begins the moment you stop chasing change and start embodying it. Many people fail because they try to force new behaviors while still carrying the mindset of the old self. True change, however, happens only when the identity shifts. 1. The subconscious knows the truth. You can tell yourself affirmations all day long, but if your subconscious still believes the old story, the mind will always return to it. The subconscious is like an internal operating system. It doesn't listen to words. It listens to consistency, repetition, and emotion. If you want to reprogram it, you have to live your new identity long enough for it to feel real. Don't say, "I want to be confident." Say, "I am learning how to stand with confidence." Don't say, I'm trying to be disciplined. Say, I'm becoming the kind of person who keeps promises to myself. That subtle shift from trying to becoming tells the subconscious that change is already in motion. 2. The role of environment in transformation. Most people underestimate how much their surroundings reinforce their identity. Your environment, the people you talk to, the spaces you live in, the media you consume, acts as a mirror. It constantly reflects who you believe you are. If you're trying to grow but your environment keeps reminding you of your old self, your progress will feel like swimming against the current. Behavioral psychologists call this environmental design, the practice of shaping your surroundings to support who you are becoming. If you want to be healthier, keep visible reminders of that goal. Fresh food in the kitchen, workout clothes ready to go, a supportive friend group that values health. If you want to think differently, fill your environment with ideas that challenge you. Books, conversations, or communities that reflect your potential, not your past. You cannot plant new seeds in toxic soil and expect them to grow. 3. The biology of belief. Transformation is not magic, it's biology. When you believe something strongly, your brain and body align with that belief. Your posture changes, your heart rate adjusts, your attention focuses differently. This is what neuroscientists call the psychophysiological response. Your body prepares to act according to your expectations. When you believe you can't change, your nervous system enters a defensive state, bracing for failure. When you believe you can, your physiology opens toward opportunity. This is why visualization and affirmations, when done with emotion, actually work. Research shows that imagining yourself performing an action activates nearly the same brain regions as physically doing it. The brain begins to treat the imagined reality as familiar, lowering resistance when you act on it in real life. You become, quite literally, what you practice being. 4. The ego and the mask. Philosophers and therapists alike have long discussed the concept of the false self, the persona we create to survive. As children, we learn what behaviors earn approval and what provoke rejection. Over time, we construct a mask to protect ourselves. This mask helps us fit in, but as we age, it begins to suffocate us. The desire for authenticity becomes stronger than the need for acceptance. The journey of transformation begins when you stop identifying with that mask and ask the most dangerous question of all: who am I beneath what I was taught to be? Therapists call this the process of ego death, not a dramatic disappearance of the self, but a soft loosening of identification. You stop defending every opinion. You stop needing to be right. You stop performing worthiness. Instead, you begin to observe your thoughts instead of becoming them. And slowly, life starts to feel less like effort and more like unfolding. 5. Authenticity as a moving target. Authenticity isn't a final state, it's fluid. Who you are today is not who you were 5 years ago, and that's not inconsistency, that's evolution. Every belief, every experience, every emotional breakthrough rewrites a piece of your internal story. Transformation invites you to live in alignment with your current truth, knowing it will keep changing as you do. This is psychological maturity, accepting that you are a process, not a product. The goal is not perfection, but participation, showing up honestly for your own evolution, one conscious choice at a time. Navigating the I in between. There is a stage in every deep change where you are no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. It feels like standing in a doorway. The old room is behind you. The new room is dark. This is the liminal space, the most fragile and formative phase of transformation. In this phase, doubt rises. You question your choices. You miss the comfort of patterns you've outgrown. This is normal. The mind prefers familiarity over possibility. If you expect resistance, you won't mistake it for failure. You'll recognize it as a sign your inner system is reorganizing around a new identity. This is also where cognitive dissonance peaks, the stress you feel when actions and beliefs don't match. Many people relieve that tension by snapping back to old beliefs. Those who transform hold the tension long enough for their beliefs to update. The discomfort is the forge. Stay with it, and the new self hardens into place. Now is the time to work smarter, not harder. You don't need heroic discipline. You need structures that make the new identity easy and the old identity inconvenient. 1. Design for the person you're becoming. Identity is reinforced by environment. If your surroundings echo your past, progress will always feel uphill. Redesign your context to cue the future you. Create default choices that reduce friction. Put the most important task where you can't miss it when you sit down to work. Lay out walking shoes the night before if movement is a priority. Keep healthy options visible and convenient. Hide or remove the ones that pull you backward. Use friction audits. List 3 behaviors that support your new identity and 3 that sabotage it. For each supportive behavior, remove 1 obstacle. For each sabotaging behavior, add 1 obstacle. Small changes compound. You don't need to remodel your life. You need to tilt it. 2. Identity first language. Behavior follows story. Speak in ways that bind action to identity. Replace "I'm trying to" with "I'm the kind of person who." I'm the kind of person who protects my mornings. I'm the kind of person who keeps financial promises to myself. I'm the kind of person who addresses difficult conversations calmly and directly. When the words and the world conflict, repeat the words and redesign the world until they match. 3. Micro-commitments that stick. Large goals fail in the liminal phase because they exceed your current bandwidth. Build momentum with commitments so small they're hard to refuse. Use implementation intentions. If it's 7 p.m., then I prepare tomorrow's priorities. If I feel the urge to scroll, then I stand, drink water, and take 3 breaths. Pair actions with existing routines, habit stacking. After you make coffee, review your top 3 priorities. After your last work email, write 1 sentence in your reflection log. End each day with the 1 review. 1 win you'll repeat. 1 friction you'll remove. 1 step you'll take tomorrow that proves your new identity. 4. Emotional processing without overwhelm. You cannot outthink unprocessed emotion. Give feelings a channel so they stop hijacking decisions. Try name, normalize, navigate. Name. This is anxiety. This is grief. This is uncertainty. Normalize. This is expected during change. Navigate. Given this state, the next best step is a 5-minute reset walk, or I'll write the first messy paragraph and stop. Use timed allowance. Set a 10-minute timer. Write exactly what the emotion wants to say without editing. When the timer ends, do a concrete task that moves your day forward. Teach your nervous system that expression and action can coexist. 5. Belief upgrades through evidence. Affirmations without evidence feel false. Collect small proofs. Keep a simple evidence log. Each time you act in alignment with your new identity, record 1 line. Date, action, effect. Review weekly. Let data, not mood, update your self-image. Use minimum viable exposure. Choose a situation that triggers the old pattern. Enter at the lowest dose that is still meaningful. Debrief. What did you expect? What actually happened? What will you try next time? Your nervous system learns safety by surviving small experiments. 6. Boundaries that protect momentum. Change requires energy. Protect it. Establish non-negotiables. A protected start to the day before reacting to others. A weekly meeting with yourself to review priorities and remove clutter. A technology cutoff that preserves sleep and clarity. Practice clean exits. End draining conversations with 1 sentence that is true and brief. I don't have the bandwidth for this now. Let's schedule a time. Or, I'm not the right person for this request. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates with schedules. 7. The midlife advantage. If you're over 35, you're not behind. You're better equipped. You have pattern recognition, context, and a clearer sense of cost. Use them. Prioritize leverage. 1 decision that eliminates 10 recurring frictions beats 10 minor optimizations. Trade intensity for consistency. Your life is a marathon with sprints, not a sprint with breakdowns. Align goals with values, not trends. Chasing relevance is expensive. Living by values is sustainable. This phase rewards steadiness. The new self doesn't arrive with a drum roll. It arrives quietly, because you have been rehearsing it in private. When transformation begins to stabilize, something subtle shifts. The noise fades. The urgency to fix yourself quiets. You no longer chase breakthroughs. You cultivate balance. This is the stage of psychological maturity, when awareness and action begin to move together. At this point, growth no longer feels like a fight. It feels like alignment. You don't wake up asking, how do I change? You wake up asking, how do I stay true to what I know now? 1. The integration of emotion and reason. In neuroscience, mature transformation shows up as stronger coherence between the limbic system, emotion, and the prefrontal cortex, reason. In daily life, it feels like steadiness. You still feel anger, sadness, or fear, but they no longer dictate your behavior. They become information, not commands. This is self-regulation, the ability to experience emotion without being consumed by it. You pause before reacting. You breathe before responding. You choose your words with intention instead of impulse. That pause is not weakness, it's evolution in real time. It's the gap between stimulus and response that Viktor Frankl described as the birthplace of freedom. 2. The new relationship with time. As inner balance grows, your sense of time changes. You stop racing toward the future or regretting the past. You start operating from the present. The future becomes less about chasing what's next and more about expressing what's now. You realize that transformation is not a countdown to a better life. It's the ongoing process of aligning today's choices with deeper truth. You make decisions slower but surer. You care less about speed, more about direction. This shift is subtle yet powerful. It dissolves the anxiety that comes from comparing timelines. You understand that the mind evolves at its own pace, and that pace is enough. 3. The quiet signs of real change. You can tell transformation has matured not by what you start doing, but by what you stop doing. You stop needing to prove. You stop arguing to be right. You stop replaying the same emotional stories for validation. Instead, you respond with calm where you once reacted with defense. You hold silence where you once filled it with noise. You express boundaries without guilt. These quiet reactions are evidence that the old emotional circuits have weakened. From the outside, it may look like stillness. From the inside, it feels like freedom. For growth is a spiral, not a ladder. Even at this stage, transformation continues. The same lessons return, but each time, you meet them at a higher level of consciousness. You notice your triggers sooner, recover faster, and integrate deeper. Growth isn't a ladder you climb once. It's a spiral you revisit endlessly with more awareness. Regression is no longer failure, it's feedback. You don't shame yourself for slipping. You use the moment to refine understanding. This mindset shift marks true inner maturity. The recognition that transformation is not about arrival. It's about continuous participation. 5. The power of perspective. At this level, challenges stop feeling like punishments. They become invitations to evolve. When life presents uncertainty, you ask, what part of me is this situation trying to develop? This question turns obstacles into teachers. Pain becomes purpose. Discomfort becomes data. Viktor Frankl captured it perfectly. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Transformation, at its peak, is this surrender, not to weakness, but to wisdom. You no longer resist what happens. You reshape what it means. When transformation stops being a project and becomes a way of living, you realize that change was never something to chase. It was something to embody. You are no longer working on yourself. You are simply living with awareness. Every moment becomes part of an ongoing dialogue between who you were and who you are becoming. 1. Transformation without striving. At this stage, growth feels natural. You no longer need dramatic motivation or constant reinforcement. You act from alignment, not desperation. You don't wait for perfect timing. You adjust in real time. You begin to outgrow without forcing. You learn without pressure. You heal without rushing. The external world starts to mirror your internal state. Relationships become more authentic. Decisions feel lighter, and daily life carries a sense of quiet purpose. Transformation was never about becoming extraordinary. It was about realizing that ordinary awareness, practiced deeply, is extraordinary enough. 2. The psychology of presence. Presence is not stillness. It is alert participation in life without the interference of constant self-narration. You stop explaining who you are to others. You start experiencing who you are within yourself. Mindfulness, in its purest form, is not about emptying the mind. It's about seeing clearly every thought, every emotion, every intention, without judgment. Modern psychology confirms that sustained awareness reshapes the brain's networks for focus, empathy, and resilience. Neuroscientists call this neural coherence, the harmonization of different brain regions into a unified system. It's the biological reflection of psychological wholeness. 3. From fixing to flow. When you no longer see yourself as a problem to solve, you start living from a state of flow, a balance between challenge and capability. You're not trying to prove your worth anymore. You're expressing it. Life becomes less about control and more about cooperation with what is. You realize that uncertainty is not the enemy of peace. It's the space where possibility exists. When you stop trying to force outcomes, clarity emerges naturally. This is what it means to evolve from striving to allowing. Transformation becomes less about doing different things and more about being different while doing the same things. 4. Living in continuous renewal. Every ending you've survived was never a collapse. It was an initiation. Each heartbreak, each disappointment, each failure was a threshold guiding you toward depth and authenticity. Now you see that transformation was never about erasing your past. It was about integrating it. Every version of you, the confused, the driven, the afraid, was part of the same unfolding intelligence. You no longer reject who you were. You thank them for getting you here. Transformation never ends because consciousness never stops expanding. You are not meant to arrive. You are meant to continue. 5. The essence of a transformed life. To live transformed is to live awake. To notice instead of react. To listen instead of defend. To choose instead of repeat. You understand that awareness itself is liberation. Even when you stumble, you don't lose what you've gained, because awareness doesn't unlearn itself. Once you see truth, it stays. In the end, self-transformation is not about perfection or permanence. It's about honesty, compassion, and participation in your own evolution. You stop needing to ask, "When will I be transformed?" Because the answer becomes clear. You already are, every time you choose to see, to feel, and to act consciously.